Hi there, welcome back. I'm Mark Underwood and this is the Frost River subdivision. This is update number 7 and today we're going to be taking a look at Trackwork. So without further ado, let's get started. Major track work lately has been centered on the staging tracks on the rear of the main part of the layout. So here you can see I'm drilling holes for the infrared sensors at the ends of the tracks. There's 2 more infrared sensors at the center point of each of the 5 staging tracks, one about an inch to either side of the center point. This is going to allow me to stage 2 trains on each track, regardless of which direction they're going. Each of the 10 half sections of track will have an infrared sensor at either end and a current-based block detection for that section. In addition, the 2 yard ladders on either end of the staging area are a block detected section so that I can tell when the ladder is clear for trains to enter or exit staging. All of this will be wired to a JMRI system for the dispatcher to remotely control, along with servo-based power turnout controls for all of the staging yard turnouts. The dispatcher will be located in the hallway outside the room, so he won't be able to see what's going on directly, but he will have an infrared video camera view of the staging area so that he can monitor the situation at all times. One advantage of having your workbench situated in the same room as and just beneath the layout is that you can do a lot of the delicate soldering work on the bench where it's easier to reach and do a better job with the soldering. Whenever possible, I like to use this heavy steel block as a heat sink to protect the plastic ties from being damaged by the heat of the soldering operation. I like to solder the joints on the staging tracks so that I only have one pair of track feeders to worry about for the block detection. I still make sure that there are rail gaps at the ends where the track is insulated to make sure expansion is okay. I also try to solder the side of the rail that will be away from the viewer so that the solder joint itself is hidden from view. Once the rails are soldered together, it's time to start laying things out and making sure it's cut to length and making sure that the infrared sensors are mounted in the correct locations on the track. Here's a quick overview of how I attach feeders to the rail. It's not the most aesthetic way, but it seems reliable as I've done it. The first step is to create a blob of solder in the web part of the rail on the outside. I keep the soldering iron moving so as to minimize the amount of heat that's applied to the plastic ties. The metal block underneath also helps with this by keeping the ties cooler. This section gets 2 pairs of feeder wires because it's the center section of the staging track. I'll be cutting the rails in between the 2 infrared sensor mounts, and so I need separate feeders for both sides. Next, I bend the stripped end of the feeder wire into a L shape so that I can press it flat up against the solder blob. I heat the solder blob up again and then insert the wire into the wet solder. Once I remove the heat, the solder will cool and the wire will be trapped to the side of the rail. Sometimes it works, sometimes it takes a little more effort. Once the feeders are attached, it's time to install the track on the layout. looking up here, this bit of a mess here. This is the beginnings of the yard ladder for the Frost River yard. And the key thing I want to show here is the throws for these inside tracks. I'm routing them underneath the switches and the tracks so that they're over here on the outside edge of the ladder. This is normally how a real railroad would do it, to keep the, if possible, to keep the conductors and trainmen from having to cross tracks in order to control the ladder. These little tiny switches here allow you to throw the turnout. Again, they don't work that well. This is still a work in progress here. So, working on that. There'll be 2 of those that have to go underneath the tracks, and then there are 1, 2, 3 more switches in the yard, which won't have to go under the tracks, but they'll be connected similarly with a slide switch hand throw. So this is still very much kind of in the piecing it together phase under construction, but it's the last major section of the layout to be done. Back here in the back, you can see I have laid my second of the 5 staging tracks, and the glue is drying on that, so hopefully we'll have that in operation shortly. And you've got the yard ladder over here, staging yard ladder that is. Most of this will be hidden behind a structure. The W.T. Young Storage Company will be a very large transfer warehouse type building, which will be served by this siding here. This will be right in front of the building, and all of this back here will be hidden inside the building. So right over here we have the swing gate that is going to protect the main line from trains crossing on. So the main line goes this way. This is the branch line headed over to the narrow shelf. So this swing gate's going to keep trains on the branch line from crossing the main line when they're not permitted to. So I've got it sort of installed. It swings, it rotates, and right now I'm working on the linkage and control underneath so that we can control that with a push button, and it'll have a stepper motor drive turning the flag when you push the button. That I'll get to eventually. A lot of planning involved in doing that. So here's another piece of the planning work that's going into the yard construction. There's going to be a road bridge, an overpass, crossing over the yard at this point, and it'll be part of the disguising of the staging tracks in the back. So these little pieces here I made to plan where the piers for the bridge will go, and also an access road, and try to figure out where the track center lines need to be in order to fit all 6 of the yard tracks through this space, and leave some clearance for hands and realistic scenery look. So I made these 2 templates, one for a pier with a road beside it, and one for just the pier with enough clearance for a little bit of scenic grass, and also clearance on either side for the cars to pass through unimpeded. So this is just you know, spacing things out and seeing how everything fits, and making sure it's all going to go through there okay. Well, I guess that about does it for update number 7. Stay tuned for the next update, which I hope will not be very long. Thanks, and have a good day.